Hello, everybody, and welcome to the CPL Weekly Podcast for Civ 6. I'm Sarnath. Joining me, as always, is my co-host, King Louis XIV, and our guest this week is Rip Panda. Go ahead and introduce yourselves, gentlemen.
Hi, I'm Rip Panda. I'm an admin at CPL. Been on here once before a couple weeks ago. I manage bots, help with everyone's technical needs, and do a bit of behind-the-scenes work for the league.
I'm King Louis XIV because I like to think that I'm the Sun King, even though I know I'm not the Sun King. And I'm just all about Civ, and I try to bring enthusiasm, and so they decided to put me on this podcast to channel that enthusiasm to help others get into it.
We got a pretty exciting episode for this week, guys. We have a lot going on, definite things going on with everyone's freaking out. They're loading into their games, and they're spawning either next to a city-state and seeing a settler for the first time, or they're spawning right on top of another player, and it's like GG turn 0. Like, what? Can anyone explain what's going on with that? Do we have any idea?
I don't think anyone researching since the patch came out. I have a background in game development. My degree's in game design and computer science, and so reading through the Lua files, takes some time, but it's definitely something I can understand for the most part. Or I guess we can start by this plot assignment algorithm looks like. Essentially, it starts by splitting the map up into various regions, which should make this issue a non-issue, but based off of what I've been reading in the code, that there was a new system implemented in this patch to score plots in each region and try and find a fallback plot if the plot it's currently looking at isn't as good as that plot. But there's obviously some issues with this new system because it's causing us to spawn next to CS and other players. So the way that algorithm's...
Does anybody know if does this happen less in single player? Because I'm just wondering how that got through.
It is a single player bug as well. Most of the evidence that I've submitted to 2K in our official bug report or for CPL has been from single player games, although I've gotten a couple save files from multiplayer games.
So how did that get through there? I wonder how that got through their QA with something that comes up that often. That's pretty odd, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I can't really speak to their entire process. I'm not privy to all that information, of course. I know Firaxis has an internal dev team and an internal testing team, but I know it also, in theory, is supposed to go through the 2K testing team at some point. My interactions with 2K, I'll be honest, haven't been that fulfilling. As a developer, I'm used to a little bit more interaction through bug reports, and I tend to get a lot of canned responses. But there's really no way to know how it got through the testing. I think it's a bit much to say that they didn't test it. But I think the other thing to point to is in our league, we don't play with standard settings where everyone's a fan of World Age New. We consistently do low C, and we pretty much always do abundant resources balanced start. Because why wouldn't you? It makes the game go a little bit faster, makes everyone not have as bad of starts, hopefully, and balanced is good if it's balanced, right?
But if you're playing single player, you probably don't care about balanced start, or so that I could see it coming up less. That's one of the things that makes it happen more often if you have balanced start on.
Yeah, that is the information that's been given to us directly from Firaxis, is they've advised us to not use abundant and balanced, and that's not really something that a lot of league players want to venture into. So we've been trying to do various other configurations, such as going up a map size and removing a couple CS. What other attempts have we done? Seems like that one's the most successful. It's just raising the map size. Some people have been going with the same size and dropping a player, so 7-game person on a standard map.
Is it more stable? Let's see. I've been mostly playing duels and small teamers, which those have been fine. I haven't had really. I think one time I saw that spawn problem, but just one time. But is like a 6-person less likely for that to happen than an 8 or a 10? Or
In theory, it may, but I contextual based off of map generation and the amount of CS and players you have in the game after that. And to get a little bit more specific, if you you could have a Pangea map that say has 300 tiles of land, but the same size Pangea map could also vary all the way down to 200 in theory, just because of the way maps are generated. And an important point here is that maps are generated before players are ever considered. They use a simulation technique to build the map up and try and simulate some environmental factors over time, continents. Hence, they actually have a tectonic plate simulation in a portion of in the early part of the map generation. But all of this happens without considering that there's actually going to be players in the game and that they want a balanced game. And so the plot assignment, the starting spot assignment algorithm has to analyze the map and try and work around what's given. And with this new system, it's not able to deal with what it's given.
Does it have anything to do with does this, if like 12 players played with excellent computers and bandwidth, it's still less likely to happen? Is that a big factor?
No, technically, no. Your computer and your network connectivity has nothing to do with this bug at all. It's purely, from what I can see, related to the number of civs, both major and minor, in the map and how big the map is essentially, like I said earlier, the map is supposed to get split up into regions. And so why are players spawning in the same regions? It would kind of, but the odds that players are going to spawn on tiles immediately adjacent to each other, or that are also happens to be the perfect split of those regions, is just really, really low.
So it just happens less in a duel because there's just less things to generate. Yep. And
like you have in a duel, the amount of space in the map like as a ratio to players is much higher than in, say, an 8-person standard, or depending on what map is being generated. Based off of the Islands games I've been playing in the past couple days, because I've been fooling around single player trying to get Indonesia to work in some way, shape, or form. I've yet to see it happen on an Islands map, and to me that's because there's way less land, meaning that regions are going to be much more well defined.
And so this shouldn't happen in like the pre-made maps like Clover or
no, that would actually happen. Oh man, if you could get this to happen in Snowflake or Clover, that would be so awesome. But I'm almost positive it won't, because the difference between a static map and a generated map is there's no algorithm trying to figure out where to put the players and whether it's a good position to put the players in. It's static. The spawn positions are predefined. It's not a issue with getting the players on the board. It's an issue with the algorithm that actually chooses where we're going to put the players on the board.
Yeah, so there is but I know people don't like those maps, but sometimes it feels like people just banging their heads like they know it's going to be a problem, and then they go nuts when, oh, surprise, it's a problem. Like they could just play during this period until they patch it, play on the pre-done maps and be okay.
You say in this period before they patch it, but with our history of Firaxis, there's no way of telling just how long that'll be. We have yet to see a hot patch come out for Civ 6, but who knows? Maybe this could be the first one. If my original hope and investigation was that I would be able to debug it all the way. I have yet to come to a complete solution, but in my investigations, I've found a couple other parts of their code that confuses me and makes me.
And do you hope? Do you have a hope? Like, a lot more than we. Do you have a hope that, like, right now, is it still not that stable to make mods? Like, if you made a mod, it would probably break the game.
I can't comment on the issues with mods that players were experiencing in the past. So when a mod is created, you're either modifying or adding files. And if in the case where I'm not modifying an existing, just some single lines and say I'm actually calling functions from code that Praxis wrote. Oh, they still have the ability to change those functions. All it takes is to say, like, instead of it being this function name being set major civ starting plot locations to set major civ starting spots, like now all of my code that calls that and then tries to use their code is broken. And so I'm guessing that is what happened last patch when we experienced a bunch of mods that's having issues, is they updated some portion, and I believe it was particularly in the UI code, because that was the general type of mod that we saw the mod issues.
But are you hopeful? Because I know with Civ 4, they had a lot of good mods that were created, and I think at the end of Civ 5, what I understand is there were a lot of good mods. So, I mean, do you have a hope that it will come that way with Civ 6 eventually?
Oh, like, I guess what I'm trying to say is I don't consider mods unstable even last patch. I consider mods that aren't updated to handle the new code unstable.
But I mean, do you think it'll be? Are you hopeful that by the year 3 or 4 that it will be a nice stable environment to mod the game, and you'll see a lot of mods like in the previous Civs?
I mean, there are already a lot of mods out there in the workshop if you go and look, and a lot of them work even with the latest patch. The issue with the mods breaking, I think it's exactly what Rapanda said, because... Not right now, sweetheart. Sorry, my daughter. But, one of the issue we had with the biggest issue with the mods we had were the NQUI that was used by a lot of the communities out there for tournament use, because viewing stats in a teamer just doesn't work, because that still hasn't been fixed, even though it's been an issue since day 1 of release. Why, like, that affects the casual players as well, not just multiplayer, where me and a friend are having a LAN party and we do a co-op against the AI or something. That affects those players too. So it affects a great larger deal of the player base than just the 1% of the multiplayers out there. So how come that hasn't been addressed yet? Why isn't that on the plate? Because that's not something just a multiplayer dev could do, correct?
Sorry, what was the original issue? I heard like all the first 5 words of that.
Viewing the stats and demographics for teams, for individual players on a team, that doesn't just affect multiplayer players. That affects the couple of single players that link up and go to have a little LAN thing going against the AI, or So from what I know, you're right. That's not a multiplayer thing at all. Really, that's a UI dev thing. And let me put it this way. If I were to go talk to Firaxis and say multiplayer dev, they're going to think of their networking programmer. Or the guy, not the guy who is managing the team UI. Because in reality, the same systems that are running the team UI should be running the single player UI for everything. And what it comes to, some code that the guy and UI guy was using changed, and he didn't notice in time, and it started breaking stuff. Now, I do know that Firaxis wasn't aware of that, I believe, before the Nubia patch. But so hopefully we'll see a fix coming in the next patch. And I can understand, from a developer's perspective, not releasing a fix on the first cycle that you're aware of things. When I work on a game engine, and we don't always release the bugs right away because we don't get to test them. Now, obviously, that, in my mind, doesn't seem like the reason. We should at least,
to be fair to Firaxis, we should give them props for, like, apparently, like, Civ 5 never was that good for multiplayer, right? Maybe until the very end, but so at least the actual, like, mechanics of the multiplayer, they did a pretty good job of that. It may not always be stable, but it's a lot better for multiplayer than Civ 5 was. Everybody agrees, I think, in terms of the gameplay mechanics.
I can't speak to it personally. I've seen a few people that would dispute that, but those people are still on Civ 5 multiplayer. It's hard to judge.
Canuck would be the expert on that, since he runs the league. But what I know, I mean, I didn't play tons of Civ 5, but what I've heard is that really the community really got fractured during that period, because a lot of people just kind of gave up on the multiplayer. So now we're slowly getting those Civ 4 people back.
Yeah. So getting back to the original topic of spawning next to each other, I'm happy to, if anyone wants to contact me after the podcast and get like a thorough rundown of the starting spot assignment algorithm, I will be happy to do so. But it's going to be a long talk. That's like 20, 30 minutes in and of itself, and I don't think we want to spend over half the podcast on this.
What about bots? So you're the bot man. Have you got any new bots in the works that you can sort of like tease us on that are going to come up that people would be
the big feature I'm working on right now, which is something that a lot of people have requested, and I was working on it before, but once some technical things I've learned. Like when I first started making bots, I knew nothing about making bots. I'm a game dev, not like a web dev. So I've been learning as I go for the last 8 months. But learned a lot of stuff in the last few months that is making things possible again. But it's printing out a summary of what the settings for the game are after the draft, with the draft. And then recently in the player panel, we've been having a discussion about different types of drafts. Classically, we've been doing divide the number of all the available civs amongst the players randomly. That is kind of a balanced way to do it. It gives everyone an equal chance to play all the most powerful civs. But another way we can do drafts is instead of drafting civs, we draft pick order. So I would get, let's say the three of us are playing a first player game, I would get randomly assigned first, of course, because it's my bot, right? And then Sarnath is going to get assigned third, and King Louis gets assigned second. And so I would get first pick out of the available civs. Now, I've seen a lot of arguments that we're just going to see the top 8 civs getting played over and over. And you're right, like, if Gorgo, Germany, Persia are up, they're going to get picked. But at the same time, I look at it like this. The bans for the games that I play vary wildly. Some people never ban Persia. Some people always ban Persia. Some people, like myself, like to start banning from the bottom of the list. I prefer to get France, Norway, Spain out of the draft rather than the high end. And because I feel like we have enough high-end civs now that we can afford to leave civs like Germany and Gorgo.
Yeah, this might be better resolved, because I see another phenomenon that's really good happening is that more votes. Then maybe this should be just voted in the news. Just what should the 4 civs that be banned, and then have that done and not have an issue anymore.
We want to be very careful. I think we used to have Scythia Sumeria in Australia default disabled. It was not even a vote. When you voted on those civs, you were voting to bring them back into the game. But if you look at the vote bot, I don't automatically add those reactions. Several months ago, we made the conscious decision to not auto ban civs. It's one of the few things that we don't want to touch. Now,
yeah, that makes sense. But how easy is this to ban? Like, can somebody try to ban like 10 civs? I don't know exactly how.
Oh yeah, like you just ask Harambe. He attempts to ban 10 civs every game, but not, like I said, not everyone's going to try and vote for the same amount of civs, let alone the same civs. So usually we end up with the 3 Sumerias of the Australia, pretty much always banned, and then usually 2 to 3 of the top tier and maybe the 2 or 3 of the bottom tier. So we usually end up between 4 to 8 civs banned. And a big factor in this is the number of civs that exist and the number of players that are in the game. And we consistently try and not ban too many so that everyone still gets 2 options or 3 options, depending on how things are going to get divvied up after the draft.
Yeah, speaking of bans, and this is like a personal quest for me, like I got, I started talking about it, and other people have, of course, brought up the religion, and now there's a pretty overwhelming vote to remove the bans for Defender of Faith and Crusader, and then make that an option. You can ban it, but they're not going to be banned by default. So I think that's
actually up for vote right now in the community.
But it's pretty overwhelming. It's like 16 votes. It's like overwhelming the option to move them to default enabled with an option.
I mean, everyone really liked a lot of the changes that came with this patch for religion. Between the religious lens, the new choices for religion, and as well as the choices for your pantheons. The 2 new choices are actually pretty nice. And you have people that are able to get the new warrior monks up to like 109 combat strength, which is ludicrous that it could even happen to begin with.
And that, I think it's good because now there's actually some. I mean, maybe it's just me. I actually still, have a quest to try to win religious league games. So for me, I'd really like those have those as an option, even though I know that they've been abused before.
The biggest problem with allowing Defender of the Faith and Crusader is how much they give. It's plus 10 combat strength. At plus 30, you start one-shotting units. If you have a difference in 30 over the unit you're attacking, you're going to one-shot it unless you have horrible luck and you low-roll it for whatever reason.
But it's only in your borders, though, so it's not really... I mean, you can sort of use little offensively, but you can't just run over stuff, though.
If my unit is in the border and attacking your unit out of it, it retains that buff. And for Crusader, I have to convert your city. So at least for Crusader, you have to do some work. But Defender of the Faith, you can spad. Wow, really? English, so
but
hard.
I just think it's like they say, religion is. Most people admit it's almost impossible to win on it, and then they took away two of the really big benefits. So like, why
the reason for that is Russia. Russia is almost guaranteed to get the first religion in the game because Lavras and a Lavra on your capital is 2-turn build, 3-turn if your tiles are horrible. And I mean horrible. You have a horrible fucking start is Russia, and you could still 3-turn a Lavra and crank out to get that first great profit. And then you get Defender of the Faith.
But if you're using it the way you're saying you are, and you're just for offense, and then you're not going to be generating a lot of faith. So somebody has the option of generating a lot of faith and undoing your city and then you lose that Defender of the Faith. So the person still has to build up faith.
Is Russia goes for Cossacks, which is the unique cavalry unit, which promotes the spamming of the classical era unit, the Horseman, which is already the ideal unit for that time period. Hell, even into the medieval era, horses are really strong because they're so easy to make in mass.
I'm just saying the other player has an option. The other players have an option to build up a lot of faith and unconvert those cities that you have. If all you're doing is offensive, like you say, then you're not building up a lot of faith. So if somebody does build up a lot of faith, they can undo those cities, and then you lose that Defender of the Faith.
So Louis, we're talking about a civ that wants to sit in a corner and sim till they get cav, and it's ideal for them to build 1 or 2 Lavras early, to get religion and to get rider points.
No, I see what you're saying. I'm just send up a couple of horses there with escorting my missionaries and unconvert the city.
You're not going to be able to unconvert. 1 or 2 Lavras is more than enough to generate the amount. Plus 10 is more than enough to keep me safe all the way up through the medieval era.
And another thing with that as well is Russia gains a faith on every tile that's tundra, on all of them. So imagine if I took Defender of the Faith, and let's say my Pantheon was Earth Goddess. All of a sudden, all these beautiful Tundra tiles are now giving me 2 faith each. Or if I was really intelligent and I actually took Aurora Borealis, to where I get double faith adjacencies for being in your Tundra or snow tiles for my holy sites. So those Lavras are going to be kicking 15
But don't
faith
destroy Defender of the Faith just because of Russia. Then say you can't use it with Russia then.
Oh man,
we're not saying to ban it because of Russia. We're saying the reason why people don't want to unban it is because of Russia.
But then just don't they're ruining. But it's like the religion is already weak, and you're taking away the 2 things that really help it. So it doesn't make any sense to me. Like, just don't let Russia use it, or there's got to be a better solution than just the thing.
Discussed in both the suggestions channel, general chat, the player panel for,
But also, nobody's ever tried to counter this by going religion. Everybody always tried to counter it with the military. How do they know it doesn't work to counter it with religion? That was my point, though, Louis. Is it's not viable for anyone else to try and counter it by going religion. If I try and counter Russia's religion, I am sacrificing more than I can afford in all the other areas to get that religion, to get that ability to counter them. And you know what else?
there's a limited number of great prophets. So if I get into a particular start where I can't, like, Russia gets a wonder. Fuck it, Russia doesn't get a wonder. They still are going to get their lavas first because of how quickly they build them. I don't get a wonder. I'm a military civ. If now you want me to go build a holy district, the least valuable district for me, and just to go counter their +10, it wouldn't be an issue if it wasn't such a big bonus. We're talking about 2 great generals worth of bonus to your players or to units. And you know, there's some argument that there's other civs now who could potentially, like, battle them for it. But at the same time, like, I don't see Gatarga or Khmer actually making it to religion before them. Astrology is just too big, and Blavras are still take twice as long to build.
But I'm saying when they expand, like when they expand and add more cities, those new cities don't start out with the religion. They still have to convert them.
No, they don't, but it doesn't matter at that point because they already have it. You get it from your first 2 cities at most. Like, often, like, if I'm Russia, I'll build a Lavra in my first city and forget about it. If I was playing with Defender of the Faith, I'd build 2 and forget about it.
I'm saying when they add more, you said, like, when they're simming and they're adding like 3, 4, 5, 6 cities, those new cities don't start with Defender of the Faith because they haven't converted them yet.
No, but they have consistent pressure from the original cities. These missionaries are not expensive, and what the hell else is Russia going to spend their faith on?
Well, here's the thing, though. The counter-argument, just to play devil's advocate here. If I pop an apostle, I can take one of the new beliefs that were put in the game to where a new city I drop converts to my religion.
Yep. That's a new thing.
So if you did what Sarna said and you put a city near him, then that city's going to apply religious pressure and help you unconvert it, right? I mean, pop a city right up against their city, and then you had enough faith you could.
I mean, in theory you could, but your passive pressure is fighting the passive pressure of all of their cities. Any trade routes also apply pressure. We've seen how that works and interacts actually now because of the developments from this new patch. So
unless you build a holy site in that new city, you're marching your missionaries all the way from wherever your territory is. That could be pretty close, but most likely it's a decent distance away, and they have a much shorter distance to get their missionaries and apostles out.
You may all be right, but I'm saying we really don't know, though, because nobody's tried to counter it with the new religion patch. So nobody really knows for sure how powerful it is with the new religion.
I mean, what part of the new religion do you think is going to make Russia not always be able to get it first? Like, literally the only way I see Russia not getting... I don't see a way where Russia doesn't have dibs on first religion.
No, but you can get warrior monks, and then get warrior monks and go in there and start bashing around.
No, that doesn't affect it. We're talking about great profit points, not faith.
No, I'm just saying, but there's other religion mechanics that have changed. So I'm just saying nobody's tried to counter this thing you're talking about under the new religion system. This is all just theories. Nobody's actually tried to counter it with religion in this patch.
This is true, and I think you have some good points, but I think we also need to venture away from this topic now.
I think we got a good heated topic. I'm happy that we got a good heated debate on it.
Moving along, let's talk about goody huts, right? A lot of people, I've actually been talking to a lot of players about goody huts, because everyone's been surprised they're getting a lot more builders, recon units, more +1 population, it feels that way. It's like going to a casino and, oh look, I'm happening to win all this money. It's that illusion from just having it happen.
It's the hot hand fallacy which is literally the just confirmation bias. When something happens to you, you remember all of the times it happened to you before, and you're way less likely to remember the times it didn't happen to you.
I don't know about that. I remember a lot of the +1 promotion to my warrior goody huts. Those hurt.
Yes, but you remember them as a whole. When you get a builder, you're like, oh yeah, builder. There's a rush of endorphins, and you're going nuts. It's a big moment, and that big moment is going to stick with you more than, oh crap, oh well, I got a promotion, and like those kind of all blend together. Whereas I actually will remember a game sometimes where that early builder off a hut mattered, or it'll be like, yeah, I got an early builder which let me chop out and get the first great general. Of course, I'm gonna remember that. That's a part, like I'm remembering it because I got the great general.
And the same thing happens with negative bias too, right? Somebody gets a bad start and they think I'm getting bad starts more than other people because they remember that
and
bad start.
Same with good starts. Like everyone talks about as the spawn bias. I'd say the last like 7 games I've played happen to have been with Esdeath, and it's like small sample size, sure, but if it was 50-50, he had like 3 great starts, 3 absolutely terrible starts that he turned around because he's a good war player.
But if you ask the players, they said he got 7 great starts. That's what you're saying.
I'd probably hear like 5 or 6, but there's a lot of confirmation bias. But getting back to goody huts, so one of the things I did, and the reason I was able to debug to the amount I did with both the map and everything, was I got a copy of the of the asset files from last patch and compared them to the asset files from this patch, and so I was able to see, aside from the executable, I can't see any changes they made in there, which granted there's probably quite a bit, but I can see any changes that were made, and Goody Huts had no changes this patch. And guess what also, now I can't speak to before Nubia, I'll point that out right now, because I'm probably, after what I'm about to say, I'll probably get a lot of hate mail or a lot of like people saying it happened to them.
You don't know what you're talking about.
You can't get settlers out of huts. It's the probability of getting settlers out of huts has been at 0 since the Nubia came out. It's that simple. I am not going to say that there isn't a chance that there was a bug that somehow managed to give you a settler out of a hut, or maybe you say no. I can't. Like that's the only thing. It would be a bug. But I would, unless someone could send me a save file. No, it doesn't even matter then, because they send me the save file.
Yeah, they randomizes even on relobbies and reloads.
Yeah, so but aside from that, there hasn't been any changes to the huts. I'm happy to pull up some percentages it is for these, but the way I wanted to describe how huts work actually, because there's 5 categories. These military, culture, social, engineering, and one other one. And
survival,
right? And so each of, or survivors, actually there's 6. There's also gold. So culture, gold, faith, military science, survivors. I pulled up the XML file. So each of these has an equal percentage of getting chosen in their categories, and then in each category there is 3 huts, and that are possible. Well, for things like, for the culture, it's a free relic, or a free civic boost, or even potentially a free civic. Actually, no, not free. There's a free civic boost, 2 free civic boosts, or a free relic. Faith, it's relic and something else. Gold, you got variations of gold amounts. But if I go all the way down to survivors refers to things like traders, settlers, and builders. And
could there be more goody huts in this pack? Maybe there's.
You know, I actually haven't gone and looked at that. I'm gonna have to go try and find that.
You mean like the number of hut spawns on a map, and how they're generated over time?
Because that would definitely affect players' perceptions of how often they're getting things. If I'm getting even 10-20% more huts than I used to, I have 10-20% more chance or opportunities to get any given thing.
It does feel like there's more of them, but I'm not any scientist. But it does. If I had to guess, I would think it seems like maybe there are more of them, but I'm not sure.
I will pretty much never go off of word of mouth when it comes to stuff like this. So I will definitely go try and look at the XML file after the podcast and make a follow-up that we can post in the summary with stuff for Sarnath. But one thing I did, stats that I did want to mention real quick for the survivor stats, because that's where there's a lot of... I've had a few arguments with people who don't believe that I can read numbers off an XML file. The percentages for getting a pop are 40%. So out of a 1 out of 6 chance to get a survivor hut, and then a 40% chance to get a pop. So
it's actually pretty high. I figured that would be lower since that's so impactful early on.
It's not as high as you think. What is 40% of 16.7? It's about 4.2.
Oh yeah, when you bring it in retrospect like that.
And so when you keep going down the list, we've got builders at 35% and traders at 15% and settlers at 0. Now, my personal guess is that they switched settlers to 0 in the Nubia patch, and I really wish I had it somehow magically unupdated Civ and before the Nubia patch. But unfortunately, I do not. But if anyone else out there randomly does have a computer that didn't get updated, but there's a lot of huts that I never see. Like, I don't remember the last time I saw a heal goody hut, which actually has a 30% chance in the military huts. It's there, but I've never actually gotten it. So this is the kind of thing I'm talking about confirmation. I didn't even know that exists until 5 seconds.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen that. I don't think I've seen that heal, but I'm not positive.
My guess is that there's a check on it that if your unit is, because that just, I mean, how unsatisfying would that be? Oh yeah, my full health warrior got that when I haven't met anyone got healed by 5. Woo!
But I think overall people like goody huts. I think what's not to
like. Oh,
for
sure. It's always exciting because you never know what you're gonna get, and it's just like gambling. You know, people like taking that risk and jumping into the unknown.
People don't like barbarians, though. That's pretty universal. That people do not like to play with the barbarians.
That's because no one likes having to defend their land.
And let's look at that for a second. I remember having a pretty long debate about this with Red Phoenix back like 6 months ago. It was just like in the middle of a game, and we started arguing about like why people want goody huts but not barbs. And I don't think it's just because they don't want to defend their land. It's because there's the only negative to having huts is that someone else might get more positives than you. But
it doesn't hit people as much. Yeah, people remember when they got like barbarian like horsemen near them. That burns in their head so much that they're like, I hate barbarians. Like, F those things. But yeah, the thought of somebody getting a better goody hut than you just doesn't burn in your brain as much.
The last time I played barbs, and this is the perfect example of what you just said, and I remember this like perfectly. The last time I played barbs, I cleared out a barb camp, had units. I was on a peninsula. As soon as I moved a settler off the peninsula, and my vision of one tile gets blocked by a hill, fucking camp spawns right there. And I can't. It spawned after I moved my scout out.
That's so horrible.
I had to delay my first settle, and like as Death starts making fun of me, like 15 turns later, when I settle my second city. Oh man, dude. Adjacent to you if it hadn't been for this like super lucky camp spawn.
I think people should look at it differently. They should look at it as like another random thing, and like that if you're like a regular player, you should like it because that gives you more of a chance against S-Death, because he might get screwed on the opening, and then that's your chance.
Yes, it does not give you more of a chance against someone like S-Death. It gives him just as much chance as it's giving you.
No, but I'm saying, say he's gonna beat you in a straight up game. You need to have some break, like he gets the worst barbarian spawn ever, and then that might be your.
Argue that it is more beneficial to the player to play without randomness and be able to actually point to deterministic decisions as to why they lost, rather than, oh man, even though I got this like extra pop from this hut and this builder, I still lost. and they focus on these things that are random things in the game. Randomness.
That's a human bug problem, though.
Yeah,
yeah,
it is.
but
But
everything
it's
is
something that you
subjective.
can't it's something that you can't separate from randomness.
But for me, I look at it positively. I look at it like if it's, I can't beat S-Death, but maybe if he gets the worst spawn and he gets the worst barbarians, maybe I can win. And I still enjoy the win, even if it was because of that.
That's fair. I'm not going to deny you your satisfaction, but at the same time, I get very little. Let me put it this way. I play a game night every Wednesday with my friends. One of my friends loves this game where you're running around a temple trying to get out, and you're just constantly rolling handfuls of dice. I fucking hate that game. All it is dice rolling. There is no skill involved, no real strategy. The most strategy is like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go after the main objective.
So for all of you Dungeons and Dragons fans out there, or if you play Rifts from Palladium, or there are numerous other games out there like the Star Wars one or the World of Warcraft one. Basically, if you like tabletops, like Dungeons and Dragons, Rip Panda doesn't like you.
So you can send your hate mail to him right now.
Pathfinder's just a modified homebrew 3.5 of D&D. You're not going to sell me that crap.
We'll have another discussion another day, but dice in D&D is very different. The entire game of Dungeons and Dragons is built around statistically modifying your chances at getting something, versus just pure randomness of what am I gonna get in this hut. If I can manipulate the probabilities of that random decision, I'm fairly okay with it. But if it's just pure random, and I have no control over something, yes, I realize this makes me sound like a control.
Think of the comedy of laughing at S-Death if two noobs beat him because he gets the worst spawn ever, and they get in the barbs and they're able to take him out because of that. That's comedy.
Louis, I think if you ever play a Diplo game and S-Death's in it, he's gonna Diplo open borders across the entire Pangea to come kill you first.
I welcome it. I openly challenge him all the time. I tell him, why is the best player in the world afraid to duel me? And he won't duel me.
Oh my god.
I challenge him openly, and today I did. And he just says, why do you don't play the top boss right off the bat? Which, it's a good point.
I admire your gusto, if nothing else.
He did duel me one time and crush me, so he did give me the one duel. I'll give him that.
All right, so let's take another step forward here. We've had tons and tons of new players come into the community recently, and I mean upwards of as many as 15 to 20 a day for a pretty steady rate now. And a lot of them, they're relatively new to multiplayer. They've picked up the game recently, played a single player game, realized I don't like playing against AI, I want to play against people, and they come and join the community to play multiplayer. And they get stomped really hard. Not all the time, but usually because they're just not used to playing against other players. Let's talk about the differences from people coming from single player to multiplayer. What are the big changes there?
I think AIs have patterns. I can't necessarily predict which unit they're going to attack, but I can manipulate the game board in such a way that I can force them into a bad decision of some kind. And I can position units in such a way that they have to attack one of these two, which puts them in the perfect position next turn for me to kill that unit with this other unit. So there's patterns that we can abuse.
Plus, I think the intensity, I think there are a lot of single player people that just enjoy building up their civ and they're kind of kicking back, and then they go to multiplayer and it's just one or two bad things they do and it's over, and that's kind of a harsh change for them probably.
Yeah, no, that's a perfect example. I'm on both sides of the fence. I played Civ 5 for over 600 hours, all single player, or just chilling back, drinking beer and playing Civ, multiple sessions, 6-hour sessions for a single game. But when I started playing multiplayer, I come from a background of League of Legends for 6 years. I'm a very competitive person if I find the right game. And for me, it's the social interaction and that kind of competition that gets me going in this league. But it can really draw, both factors can draw you. And multiplayer in Civ is not a really chill experience, and I think
Plus,
that's one
yeah,
of the
yeah.
biggest.
I know I'm not typical. Because for me, I lost 8 duels in one day, and I was just happy that I played all those duels. Most people, I guess, would be down about that, but I realize I'm not typical. I'm just like, whatever, bring it on. That doesn't get me down. I've lost to so many players now, I can't even remember. I just want to get better. I mean, so I'm competitive, but I don't like get upset when I lose because I'm just trying to get better. I guess that's my attitude towards it.
And that's good, and I think a lot of things people need to understand when they first join the league is you have to lose before you're going to get better, and you will always learn more from losing if you are paying attention. If you are not analyzing how you played, if you are not looking back at the game as a whole and asking other players what you did wrong, you're never going to learn. My first 2-3 months in the league before I won a game, and granted, I have not won a game against the likes of Esda, Philly, or any of our super top dogs. But before I won a game, I played games pretty much exclusively with the top 10. And at least one of them had to be in it because I wanted to, see a game, how a game progresses. Like, what does it look like from a opponent's perspective when they're playing, and what are they doing to me? And at the same time, I watch a lot of streams. I obviously I can't. I'd rather play a game than sit for 6 hours and watch Philly play. But at the same time, I can get bits and pieces here, and I think the most important is the start. A lot of single-player people come in and have misconceptions about what the correct build order for your first city is. I even see people coming in and thinking that it's okay to move like 5 or 6 turns before you settle. That one usually gets killed off really quick. They mention that they settled like turn. And
yeah, I think we need to do we can probably do a better job of preparing people, like telling them that they're going to lose. Maybe you really need to like hammer it in your head, like you're going to lose badly, and just be prepared for it.
It's all about the learning curve, though. And speaking of that, I want to quickly toss this in as a side note, is that, a lot of the clans in the community, they've been trying to get events rolling. Clan SunZ and Clan Casey have had training events for new players. And SunZ's next event is going to be on November 4th. It's a Saturday at 4 p.m. Eastern. And they're going to have 2 games going this time. One for the beginner players, people that want to learn the basics, just like those core issues that you were just talking about, Ripped. And they're going to have a second game for the more intermediate and veteran players who need to learn the more advanced things, like correct war moves and stuff like that. Hanzas, yes. Hansa. Are you Germany? Did you Hansa? No? Well, you did it wrong.
It's more like, did you Hansa correctly?
Right? There's a high skill cap with Germany because of that placement.
There's a high skill cap with a lot of civs.
We do have that 1700 and under room now, and there is even a pub room in here, right, on the place. So there is a place for people to go, and like you said, there's so many new members now. You will, if you want to, you could find some other new players to play with.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it's only going to get better as time goes on. We're going to see some of those players move up into the higher ranks, and we're going to see more players coming in. And if you look at other competitive esports, you don't see a lot of people in the high-end games. You see queue times for the higher-end players go up. And I feel like that's what we're going to be seeing more and more. Or you're going to see, as we gain the ability to host these less than 1,600 games more and more frequently, you're going to be seeing less and less games where you get Death in with 7 noobs.
Yeah, and we have to prepare people. I said the other day to Death, he's not causing these people's emotional issues. He's just a spotlight. Like, if you're insecure and you have anger issues, he's going to bring it out of you. So,
and it's also because he's a warmongering player. I don't mean that in a negative way. But he's just a player who's very good at war and capitalizes on it, just like a lot of other people.
He gives people a hard time who are kind of asking for it. Maybe somebody like me would just leave it alone and he'll just hammer him on it. But he's in his face. He's not a bad guy. I don't. Who are kind of immature about the game. So maybe we need to prepare people for that if they're a little insecure.
I mean, when people are tinkering around, like we had, I can't remember the player's name. No, I muted my mic. My wife had to tell me something. But we had a player, I can't remember his name for the life of me, but he would just not build a military until he was ready to just make knights. He did it every game like clockwork. And when we eventually broke it down, he'd always get really, really upset if you would attack him before he was ready to go to knights. He'd always get really mad at whoever was attacking him, and it's like, listen, you can't just blame the person attacking you. Sure, it's technically their fault you lost because they attacked and killed you, but it's your fault too for not making a military to defend yourself. You do things wrong too as a player in a game. Even the best players in our league do. And sure, it's easier to spot when you're watching as opposed to being in the heat of the moment. But you need to learn from those mistakes, like Rip said earlier.
And to follow that logic, my reaction to that is immediately, well, why didn't you Diplo one of them? You knew they were there. Like, there's actually very few circumstances in terms of spawns where you are forced to war your neighbor. I don't think I've warred my first neighbor in easily 20 games, and I've had some shitty spawns.
So in some sense, in some cases we're helping people out because maybe S-Death is a thing that pushes them to go to therapy, and they need a therapy anyway.
I think we're focusing too much on S-Death. He is not the only player that can bring this out. I've seen
El Stretcho, Gunslinger,
Tommy, Death,
Rom and Harambe in a Diplo game is nightmarish to deal with.
I'm even playful. I try to troll me. Nobody trolls me because so laid back, it's not gonna. So, but I even like playfully request people to troll me, and they don't do it. So it's definitely like certain people are gonna get
you
targeted.
Just aren't asking, right? You have to
ask.
Oh no, dude! You have to talk about rushing Oracle first if you want to get trolled. If you're a player if you're a person out there with and you rush Oracle first, please don't play a game and be my neighbor. I will not feel bad about killing you.
I played 2 games in a row 2 weeks ago with S-Death, and in the first one, me and him just teamed up. Like from 15, we were. It would have been dumb for us to try. Next game, El Stretcho was his neighbor, and so was I. And in a normal situation, El Stretcho would have probably teamed up with me to kill S-Death, because that would have been the most optimal situation for him. Sober, and he was not exactly quiet about that fact, and he had no military at turned 70. It was insane. I don't think he remembers that night, but it definitely, you have to be vocal for people to take the risk of coming after you like that. When I see someone has a military score of 80 at turn 50, I don't think, oh man, I could kill them right now. I think, oh man, how are they keeping their military score? Push.
Definitely. And it's because they Diplo their neighbors. And it's not always the right move to Diplo your neighbors in that way. Because if they can blindly sim, they're going to run away with the science game. But
I made that mistake with middle the other night.
Yeah, it's the flip side of the coin. You have to take your situation and think about what is best for you. What can you do with your current situation that will better enable you to walk away in first place? Because that's really what you want. You want
goals,
to win,
right? Like you said that you used to lose all the time, right, Sarnath? And then you started coming in third or fourth, or
yeah, I used to be in an 8-man game. I was like a 5 and 6 place kind of guy. And a lot recently, within the last 3 months, I'd say, because I took a 3-month break, and I came back and I was placing in the top 3 to top 4 almost every game I played, and it's because I took the time to watch those streamers. I don't always have time to play, but You know, because I was.
You have to have reachable goals, though, right? Like you have to, like you were satisfied, like that made you happy that you're doing better. You can't just be like all or nothing. Like I don't win and I'm gonna be miserable. You have to have like little reachable goals to go along with it.
And that's with anything, not just Civ. I mean, it's everything in life. Otherwise, you're just going to be miserable your entire life if you make your goals unattainable.
Yeah, like my goal of winning in religion, I feel it. Maybe it's because I'm crazy, but I feel it's attainable. But it could be because I'm not entirely well. But I think it's attainable.
I feel like as the underdog, you are just a fan of the underdog, Louis.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
All the victory conditions, religion is the biggest underdog by far.
Yeah, that describes you to a T, man.
Like, I feel like you would almost give up a loss to like one of the bottom players in our league just because you want to see them win.
So if it was a religious play, I mean, if they were going to win a religious victory, you mean?
No, I just meant in general, but I've totally seen that happen. There was a game where one player was Congo in the middle of like 6 civs. He had borders with everyone, but somehow he got them all to friend at the same time. And so he had 30 turns where he just went nuts, and he culture won straight up in 30 turns. Went from like 10% of the needed tourists to 100. I've never seen anything like that. But he, after the game, I was amazed that no one noticed, except for the one guy that noticed. And he messaged me and said, I see what you're doing, but I'm gonna give you a chance, because I know if you do it, I'm gonna be satisfied, and if you
But people like seeing stuff like that because it so rarely happens, like culture victories, religion, as we've just been talking about. And it's fascinating to see it happen because not a lot of people know. Like, getting a religious victory is kind of obvious. You know, you have to just control the majority of the cities of every civ to your religion. And you have stuff like culture victories, and we discussed.
Has it ever happened in a large free for all, a religious win?
Yeah, Philly got a culture win playing as Congo.
No, a religious
Harambe
win.
is the only player I know of who got a large-scale religious win.
Oh, you mean like a 12-man?
No, I believe that was a 10-man.
He got a religion victory?
He had a situation where like 3 or 4 of the players had been killed off. He was pretty much the only religion in the game, and it was super late, and the top 2 or 3 players were just raging in modern era war on the other side of the planet, and he just like had 6 cities on the coast buried in someone's territory, and he built up his giant missionary army and sent them all off at once, and all of a sudden everyone looks up from their war and there's armies of missionaries landing on their shore.
They get killed. Right?
It was too late to do anything about it.
It was a situation where if they backed off of the war, the other person who was in first or second was going to roll over them, and if anyone had backed off at the point, Harambe wouldn't have gotten the religious victory, because either a civ would have died and the other civ would gain territory. So they're no longer. Becomes much harder for Harambe to
get the majority.
Get the majority of the civ converted. But they kept at it, and they didn't notice fast enough, and he just managed to get that 50% on all the remaining civs.
I'm just hoping that, I think in a Diplo it'd be the most possible, because if the player thinks you have no chance of winning religiously, why not let you convert their civ? They get a benefit out of it.
Oh yeah, no, I like the first thing most people say when they get a religion currently is, "Who wants my religion?" And almost every one of their neighbors will be like, "What is it? Oh yeah, I want that."
Yeah, like if they take stewardship, where a commercial district and a campus each provide an additional +1 gold and science a turn, respectively. Everyone's like, hell yeah, dude, convert my cities, please. I want free gold and science.
And then when it comes down to it, if it's like what Ripped is saying, if there's a chance for me to win, or Esteth, or me to win religiously, I'm the sentimental choice. Like, let me win religiously.
At the same time, I'm not going to let you win religiously.
No,
I'll do everything I can to prevent that. And I think there's a lot of people like that.
Yeah, like a lot of people, not as much anymore because we've had so many more people join. But I remember about 6 months ago where it was common in games to where someone would be like, yeah, I got a religion, who wants it? And the immediate response from like 6 out of the 10 players in the game was, if I see a missionary, I'm declaring on you.
I'm pretty sure that started in the wake of the Harambe victory, because there was a few players who were really salty about that game.
But as still a pretty newbie player, I have the advantage of people legitimately, rationally thinking that I have no chance of religious victory. So maybe they wouldn't take it seriously till it's too late. That's what I'm hoping for.
I mean, a lot of people don't take it seriously, though, and it is a victory condition. It can happen.
And the other thing you have to keep in mind is Harambe wasn't planning on a religious victory at the start of that game. Like, he did everything but religion at the start of that game. He didn't get his religion until like halfway through the game. He got I'm pretty sure either the first or to last or the last as possible great prophet. It's you can't go hardcore. You can't even just go pure science. If you go pure science, you're gonna get rolled over. If you go pure culture, you're gonna get rolled over. If you go military, you're gonna get rolled over by a later era army. Like, all these things like need some amount of balance. Now, often you're going to find a natural focus for both your civ and your spawn, and if you have a lot of mountains, you're going to go hard science. And I don't know, I guess if you have, I can't think of something that would make you go hard culture.
Those are unbanned, right? Defender, if I play a game, let's pretend I was a good player and I have Defender of the Faith and Crusader, I have a much better chance of doing a religion victory without him, right?
Hey, Louis, you have a shout out from the chat about your win against Automation in a duel.
Yeah, that was a religious victory. It was all peace game though. It was all peace game, so it wasn't a regular type game. But I have 2 other dual religious victories. But getting a dual religious victory is not that.
Take pride in your accomplishments, no matter how small they are.
League though, by 2. I never bring that up. Everybody, like Sarnath, likes to bring that up, and then he likes to say shots fired or something. But yeah, there's no bad blood between me and Automation on my end. But yeah, it's just all for fun. I know Sarnath's just trying to have fun, but I'm probably imagining Automation doesn't ever find this fun when it's brought up.
If you ask me to stop, I won't. But another
you
thing,
still won't. I'm not asking you to stop. I'm just saying probably not.
Nah, but I mean, if you're going to talk about religion again, let's say everyone picks up a religion now thinking, oh man, religious victory is going to make a comeback here, or at least it's a threat, but if I make my own religion, I don't have to worry about it. Well, then a civ like Arabia becomes a better choice because they're guaranteed the last great prophet in every game.
And we found that out last podcast when you ruined my religion.
It was an inside job.
No, he didn't intentionally, but he had Arabia, and then
it just randomly gave me a prophet, and I didn't have a settler or anything. I didn't have any cities, so someone stepped on my prophet, and then it just never respawned, just died.
Because Under got a religion, and then I couldn't get the prophet because he automatically gets the last one, so I was not able to go religion.
But it's a good point to raise, though. Religion with this latest patch is going to see a swing back in becoming relevant. I personally have always liked making a religion at some point in the game, but most of the time you just can't afford to invest early into it, which is a big problem. But if we see a resurgence with Crusader and or Defender of the Faith, everyone's going to want to try and get a religion out because they're going to want Defender of the Faith. Or if they can't get it, Crusader. Especially if you're Spain and you slap an apostle next onto that conquistador and you go to convert someone's city, that thing is going to start smacking everyone around.
Do we have a Premier Clubs game scheduled for tomorrow? Because if not, we should utilize that for a game to test out bringing back Defender and Crusader.
Whoa.
Like we're gonna, the way like, obviously we need feedback from not just the top players, but the players who can give us the most educated and informed feedback are the top players. And I find when we take the Renaissance starts that we've been seeing recently, that all started from forcing 1 or 2 Premier Club games. Like, as Canuck, as the host, was just like, "Yep, I'm hosting Premier Club game this Saturday, and it's going to be a Ren start." So, and a couple weeks later, we see Ren starts occasionally, even from the vote. But
yeah, I think Ren starts are good because it's just something different, and you start out faster. You don't have to. It doesn't take as long to get going.
Yeah, I can understand the desire for variety, but I can also understand the desire for consistency. As someone who played a competitive sports and really enjoys competitive esports, a big mark of competitiveness is having something static that you can hold on to. For League of Legends, it's the map. It's always the same map. For Overwatch, they can't use the same, or they can use the same map every time, but they don't have enough characters to really bring in the variation that's necessary. In the past, I don't feel like we've had enough civs to have variation in effectively. Like,
you can tell from my random
not balanced.
Because of you can see from my random tangents that I don't value consistency. It's all about variety for me.
But that's the thing. If as a competitive player, or if something factor of the game is consistent, I can learn a little bit more about it every time. And I don't mean like a little bit, like one. I mean, like, I can learn one thing about it, and the next time, because it's the same thing and I'm already used to that one thing about it, maybe I learn 2 things about it, and then maybe next time I learn 3 things about it. I'm still learning things about the game, like, every time I play. You know what the stupid mistake I kept making with Indonesia was? I kept going for square rigging.
So, not to cut you off, but Canuck got back to me in the live chat, and the premiere game tomorrow will have Defender of the Faith and Crusader enabled for that game.
Oh, yeah, nice.
So
I like
trying
that.
to look up a Canuck Soldier. If you pop onto the Discord, you'll be able to see the players in game. You'll definitely have someone stringing it, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah, at least 2 or 3 people in that game stream. At least, like, every time. Because everyone loves watching it. Love seeing the player perspectives to see what makes these people better, what separates them.
Is it gonna be a Ren start again, I wonder?
It'll be an ancient start, and the players will get to decide the civs that they want.
Oh, okay, that's cool.
So we're doing random pick order then, or are we doing duplicates?
Well, he can hear, so we'll see what the answer is to that.
Because otherwise, if we do duplicates, we're going to see 10 Russias. Be afraid of change, man.
Yeah, they are.
I feel like against a top player, I have a little bit better chance if it's a Ren start, because they don't have tons of experience with it, and I don't have, so it's a little bit of a... I mean, I'm still going to lose, but at least we both don't know anything about it, instead of the usual game where I don't know anything and he knows everything.
I would argue that the best players are the ones who get to Ren in later eras more often. And, like, it's just that simple. Like, when I first started playing, my games were 3 to 4 hours, because I almost never made it into the top 3, and I would almost always die before or at Cal. Now, when I get into the top 3, top 4, I don't die necessarily at Calv, and things are very, very different. Yes, there's not as much experience, but I would argue that they probably still have more experience in those eras than you do.
I think the only way we're gonna settle this, our disagreements, is to do a duel. We have to rock and roll in a duel. That's the only way we're gonna settle this.
I mean, I'm happy to duel at some point. May not be. It might be tonight. We'll see. We'll see how I feel after this.
It'll be interesting, to say the least. I'm very keen on watching the Premier League game tomorrow. I want to see how that goes. What choices players make.
I'm curious whether I'm debating whether I want to try and play, or if I want to just sit back and analyze someone's stream.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they counter it. Like, somebody's going to get it first. How are people going to counter? How are the top players going to counter the Defender of the Faith?
I don't think they're going to try and counter it. I think they're going to attempt to hit it. Like, everyone's going to go for it, and when they can't, they're going to avoid it. That Defender of the Faith is nothing to joke about.
I think even in an always war game, if someone gets Defender, I could see every other player just having a silent agreement to not hit each other and just go kill the Defender of the Faith player.
It'll
So it
depend on who
it could backfire on you. You might just be like you get 7v1.
Ooh. So it'll be all pick, duplicates allowed, Russia banned.
That's good.
Oh, no Cossacks, boys. Cossacks already get plus for being in home terrain. That's what makes Defender of the Faith really nasty with Russia, because Cossacks get plus 15 at home.
Is it a Pangea map, you think?
I don't know.
It'll depend on what the players vote for.
Yep.
And honestly, like, yeah, Pangea is going to be worse for religious. Like, you have more chance of exposure to other civs. Whereas if we do Fractal or Island, you'll be more cut off from people just inherently.
And the votes is like overwhelming that people want to move these off of the ban and have just the option to ban them. Like the league is spoken.
I mean, keep in mind, the league has spoken about a lot of things. I'm not saying we're not going to follow. We generally follow the community's decisions, but at this point, I feel like the community is also making those votes a little bit uninformed. I'd like to like I said, I'm a game developer. I don't want to see us make a decision and then have everyone regret it hit like 2 weeks later.
Well, people can still, it's just taking it off the default ban. People can still vote to ban it in the game. That's still going to be an option. The vote that everybody went for is that have to move them to default enabled and option to ban them. They just won't be
I understand that. Like, you can ban anything in the game if you really want to. You can go put up votes that aren't in the game bot. That's totally fine. In fact, I should probably make that very clear at the top of the game bot.
But that's how it's always been, and it's always been understood that way. Because we want the community to have the power in their hands. As the administrator and moderator team, we're just there to enforce the rules and policies that the community as a whole has agreed should be in place. The only rules we've really ever pushed down were the mandatory bans on Australia, Scythia, and Sumeria when we first did it. And we lifted that, saying, hey, we don't really need to do this. The community pretty much runs itself for the most part. The players have the power.
Yeah, and I had the power to take on Gunslinger and tell him to be Australian. I did that to myself. Nobody made me do it. And I lost.
And, you know, honestly, I do expect them to come off the default disabled list. But I also expect a lot of the games to still have them banned. And it'll take some time.
That's great that Canuck is doing that, because, like you said, people are stubborn, so it only maybe from this Canuck game do people will see that maybe it's not so bad.
Until I see it in action more than once.
But I'm thankful that he's trying it, because otherwise it's hard to get people to do it. They'll just say, no, that's crap. You know, be quiet, you crazy bastard, and go back to your hole or whatever.
Be quiet, you crazy bastard.
Yeah, and I'm like, that's a little harsh, but, you know, whatever. I'm still going to try to do it.
Hey, I mean, there's nothing wrong with trying to challenge yourself or, you know, trying to set goals for yourself. You should look forward to doing that and aspire to meet them, but at the same time, you have to take everything in moderation, like we've been saying throughout the podcast. And that's the biggest thing. Again, going back to new players coming to multiplayer. Now that the league has got multiple events out there, there's been a lot of people watching streams and videos. We have tons of streamers within our league, and a lot of people around the world watch them because we have players from all over the world. And more people are realizing Civ 6 isn't a dead game. And now they're going to the stores, they're buying it, coming to the league to play with other people that they've been watching on stream, being like, hey, you know, I want to be a part of this too. And it's really been making the league a better and better place, and that's why it's still the best community out there, is because of the players.
Yeah, it's gonna come. It's gonna be I think it's gonna be bigger or bigger than the Civ 4 days. It's just that we had that downturn because the Civ 5 just wasn't that good for multiplayer, so we lost some people. But I think they're gonna slowly come back.
And keep in mind, we have I hate to say it, but a whole new generation of gamers coming. And I'm not a huge fan of playing with some really young people myself, but if they're willing to work with our league and like be mature and actually play the game, like, oh man, this is so entertaining.
Yeah, We definitely have a bunch of. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. We definitely have a bunch of people that never played even Civ 5, and probably most of the players never played Civ 4. I know Canuck definitely played it. Canuck goes back to the Civ 3 play to win days. Even before the CPL started, he was playing Civ 3 multiplayer on the gaming zone. Remember the gaming zone? Maybe you guys aren't old enough to remember the gaming zone, Microsoft Gaming Zone.
I never got into it, to be honest. I was playing. I stayed on Civ 2. Like, that was my deal for so long. And the only time I left that was to play games like Warcraft and StarCraft, as Diablo, as those games grew with age as well.
But you know there was there was multiplayer for Civ 2, Starneth, right? I played briefly a little bit.
I never really did. The only time I ever really did was on LAN with my grandfather, because he had 2 computers at his house, and I'd spend a lot of time there as a child. And he's the one who really got me into Civ.
Even original Civ had something called CivNet, which I actually never got on, but I know that it was possible to do multiplayer. Even though there was hardly any internet yet, it was called CivNet, but I never actually played it.
We have a comment from the chat here. It was called Civ 2 Multiplayer Gold Edition.
Yeah, I think I remember that. I did play a couple of games of multiplayer on it, and then I just for whatever reason didn't keep playing. But I did play it, so I can confirm that it existed, because I did actually play multiplayer Civ 2 briefly.
Yeah, and Civ's changed a lot throughout the years and the decades, and Civ 6 is still really young. People need to remember that. Yes, it's been out a year. Yes, it's very frustrating that a lot of the changes we wanted to happen didn't happen yet, but Civ 5, it was about a year or so, a year and a half, I think, before its first expansion came out. I personally didn't play Civ 5, but that just goes to show you it's going to be a while before the big expansion hits. It's probably going to have a lot of the huge fixes that we need to happen in.
But it's like I said, Canuck can tell you it's a lot better than Civ 5 and for multiplayer. Like maybe the instability is there, but I mean the actual core gameplay I think is pretty solid. It's more like Civ 4. Like it's like.
I mean, some players I've heard argue that they don't like having as many units on the screen as Civ 6 can bring, and that Civ 5 had less units. But I don't see it as like a big thing. Once
Civ
again,
4
I don't
had,
have a ton of perspective.
Civ 4 had tons of units. You didn't have the one player. Civ 4 didn't have the one player per hex rule, and people loved. Civ 4 is still one of the favorites of all time for hardcore players, and that didn't even have a 1 unit per hex rule. There were actually no hexes back in Civ 4.
I didn't play Civ 4 either.
Oh, it's like I think it's a lot of people say it's their favorite. I mean, especially if they haven't played Civ 6. Civ 4 is like really high up on the. And that was the peak of the league, I think, if you ask Canuck, because it had Civ 3 building it up, and then it went right to Civ 4. And so I think that's still the peak of the league in terms of number of players. But I think we're going to pass it eventually. But that was still the peak of the number of players, because they had the Civ 3 and then 4, but now we had Civ 5, which was a downturn, and now we're trying to come back.
Yeah, and the latest patch created a big downturn as well. But it'll swing back up. I mean, just like I said earlier, we've had 15, 20 people joining in a day that are new players. Sure, every once in a while we'll have someone come back that says, hey, I've come back, I'd like to be reactivated again, and they hadn't played in 4 months, 5 months, 6 months, whatever. Because they've realized it hasn't died out. Things have gotten better, things are improving. And even now with the spawn issue, modders all over the world are going nuts trying to make a mod that'll fix the current issues. And people are trying and testing different implementations. I hear you chuckling back there.
Dude, I've looked at like 6 different mods that try to fix it.
It's
like
rough.
Three of them are identical. Another one is like slightly different than that. And then the other 2, I'm just like, did you even look at the file changes? But like honestly, I expect I've spent easily 6 to 8 hours just reading through like one file, and at this point I'm almost positive it's something in the binary. I honestly I don't think it's one thing. A couple bugs that are not this. like there's one that allows when the regions are divided up and the computer's trying to figure out where it's going to place you in your region, it sorts all the plots by fertility and then goes down the list and evaluating each plot by several questions. And there is a particular feature in the default game right now that allows lower fertility plots with the same score as higher fertility plots to become the fallback plot. And the fallback plot is essentially just the plot that's going to get chosen, and with the way the logic's written currently.
So is that why we've been seeing, like, I know
low
myself
fertility?
personally,
Yeah.
I've been doing a lot of map generation stuff, trying to work with some players, and I've been seeing, I use the observer mod so I can see the entire map as I generate these maps. And I see a lot of people starting in snow. And I don't mean like, oh, look, they have 2 tiles of snow. I mean like abysmal in the snow field snow.
So we're a little bit. The checks that we look at each plot for after we sort of by fertility is we check if it's impassable. Well, so mountains, wonders, so on. We check if it's water. So you're not allowed to spawn on a lake, obviously. You're not allowed to spawn on the coast. Well, on the water side of the coast. You're not, and then it checks major civ distance, which is 9 tiles, not including the tile your settler is on. And then it checks his lux density. The abundant affects this heavily, balanced barely affects it at all. If people want to know about the exact numbers, I can go into it after the podcast. Then we check if you have freshwater coast. It pretty much always tries to spawn you on a river or on a coastal tile. The thing is it does not differentiate between the two. It thinks just as simple, is it a freshwater or coast? And then it checks adjacency validity, which is things like, oh man, this is a whole other little mini algorithm itself, so I'm just going to skip that one.
Right.
Then there's a natural wonder buffer, bonus resource check, and the bonus resource check is not actually adjacent tiles, it's in the vicinity, because there's actually a step at the very end of all of this where it removes resources around you and re-adds them based on your bias. Yes, some biases are applied after everything is said and done, and not all. In fact, your biases are only feature biases are, and wonder biases, which yes, those exist, are related, actually taken into account during player placement, and most of them are taken into account like afterwards. So there's some civs that are probably going to get a lot better resources around them. But that's a whole other mini algorithm. But it also checks if you're on an oasis, it checks if you have natural wonder adjacent, and then it oh, that's a little change. So there was one topic that we didn't get to today that I wanted to bring up, and it was the language of the patch notes. And I hope someone from 2K hears this, because I've talked with a lot of people, and like, it started with my original opinion. The patch notes are not, they treat us like children. And under networking, it says ongoing network changes. There's no reference to what those changes might be trying to address. To me, I take that as refusal to acknowledge what specific problems exist. But I can about 20 networking files, or files that involve networking, that were changed. And there's a whole new game session in implementation this time around. It's like they did some heavy refactoring of how they separate data in the XML files, and they did some heavy refactoring of the lobbies. And we've seen some interesting behavior out of that. We've traded some of the lobby connection issues. I haven't had very many problems connecting to lobbies, but now we have the wonderful bug where you have to sit around for a minute fiddling with stuff until one of the in-player or game options is invalid. The error goes away.
Yeah.
And that's just a small example. At least they said something about that. But like dipping the files between last patch and this patch, I found changes that are completely undocumented. This one's minor, but it exists. Island plate maps can no longer have coastal mountains. That is a huge change for island plates, because now you no longer have the chance of getting that one tile choke point isthmus between you and another island that's blocked by a mountain.
Yeah, that's a huge difference right there, because I mean, I myself have been on island plates before, and I could only have 3 cities because there was a one tile mountain blocking me from. I had to go all the way to shipbuilding before I could get a settler over there. It's ridiculous.
Yep, and it is ridiculous. And I think that was a great change. But why aren't we told about stuff like this? And why isn't there any reasoning about these changes? Is a lot of them are bug fixes and makes sense. And but there's some things that there's some bugs and not bugs that have been in the game long enough that players have assumed that they are intended behavior. A lot of players assumed for a long time that general stacking was intended behavior, even though if you look at admirals for comparison, they don't stack. And that's proof that it's a bug, and it's been confirmed to us that it's a bug nowadays. But like, we need some reasoning. And you look at other games that have strong multiplayer support, or even strong single player support. It doesn't matter. They talk about why they're making the changes they're making.
Yeah, like this implementation was done because we got reports of players were very unhappy with this or that. Okay, go make popcorn.
And I don't want to just sit here and rag on 2K for the last several minutes. I really do hope that things change in the future. I've always been an apologist for Firaxis. It's pretty much up until this patch, because I read patch notes and I didn't see anything different. And a lot of people will say, oh, blah, 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 things can change without us knowing. From a developer's perspective, I've never released a change for a product without documenting it. Definitely not intentionally, and if I ever did accidentally, it was because I forgot to post up documentation of what changed. And I'm talking about a product that isn't updated on a monthly or every few months like a game. I'm talking about a game engine which is updated like once a week.
I guess to put a positive spin on what you're saying, if you want to do it that way, is in a constructive criticism kind of way, is we understand that you guys are trying to make the fixes necessary to repair a lot of the issues in the game, but you need
I understand.
Go ahead.
I understand that they can't explain networking code to people. I'm not a network dev. I can't read it. I can read it, but it takes me a lot longer to understand some of that stuff than it should, compared to the other code. And I understand that they can't translate everything into English. I understand that's a large workload to some extent. But I'm not talking about networking changes. Is if they want to say we're trying to address this specific lobby issue, this specific lobby issue, this specific in-game issue, this specific hot join issue. That's all I'm asking for. And is the mechanical changes when they make balancing decisions, when they change unit numbers, district costs, things like that. That I want to know why, not just as we lowered this number to balance the game.
Yes, and I completely understand that, where you're coming from, but I guess the key concept here, if someone from Firaxis or 2K are listening, is we as players expect more transparency from you on these topics. How can we possibly continue to submit large reports to you with bug fixes if we can't rely on you guys to be open with us about what you're changing in these patches? The patch notes scratched the surface, and that was about it. Like tip of the iceberg sort of thing.
Yep. I don't know that there's too much more specific things to be said. I have never really had a lot of faith in 2K, but at this point, like, they need to turn something around in order for me to give them any sort of trust. And I love this game. I don't play other games very much anymore. I pretty much exclusively, aside from Civ 6, play VR games, and that's because VR is crazy, addicting. I mean, but like, something needs to change. Are there any other topics that we wanted to move on to?
Louis, you've been pretty quiet for a while.
I was just letting you guys. I don't know a lot about all the technical, mod or
Fair enough.
programming
I,
aspects. So
I just don't want you to feel like
that.
I gag ordered you or something because I didn't.
I like that rumor because it makes me sound crazier. That maybe you did maybe I haven't been screaming in the last 10 minutes and you just gag ordered me. Let people think that.
Okay.
I'm okay with that. Maybe I've just been screaming it like, bring back the religion, holy war against S-Death. You're like, no, that's not going on the air.
We're going to go ahead and we're going to tie this up for the night. Thank you to everyone who came out tonight. Thank you, Rip Panda, for being our guest.
Yeah, have a good night, guys. Thanks
Holy war versus S-Death.
Oh, jeez. Take care, guys. We look forward to seeing you guys on the next podcast. Be sure to stay tuned and come into the CPL Discord at some point if you want to catch a game with any of us. There's games going all the time, 24/7. Look forward to seeing you guys next time.
Bye-bye.